Hello, Ashley here with HeartHookHome.com, and today we are doing part 2 of the Dragon Tears coin purse crochet along. In part 2, we add the lining and the zipper to our crochet coin purse. This is a lot easier than it sounds, so we're just going to take our time. I did decide to change my colors so that you would be able to see my stitches better. I changed to just a plain fat quarter that I had that's non-corresponding, but that's okay. And now I have a white zipper and red thread. I felt like the red thread would be a lot easier to see what I'm doing than having a corresponding color with my yarn. So you're definitely going to want to correspond yours. This color change decision was for instructional purposes only. So let's get started. Grab your fat quarter that you've got for your fabric. We are going to use, I've got an old bed sheet that I'm using that's folded over, that I'm using as an ironing board. I've got my clothes iron warming up, ready to go. And so let's decide how large to make this lining. First, you're going to unfold your fabric. So let's lay this out. We're going to be working with just this bottom corner here, right? This is going to be our lining area right here. So when you're laying this out, you want to lay it on the wrong side of the fabric. So this is the pretty side, this is the ugly side, right? We're going to lay this down, and we want to make sure that we have the width correct, right? So when you're sewing your piece, let me move this out of the way. When you're sewing your lining, you want to make sure that you've got about 1 inch width on both sides, right? And that will give you enough space to do your stitches to sew up your lining. So about 1/2 inch or about 1 finger's width. Now, that's how wide you're going to want it. So I'm going to lay this here to show how wide I'm going to cut it, right? So we're just going to cut it straight up here. Now, how tall do we cut it? That's the second question. You're going to want to cut it twice the height of your bag plus a little bit, right? So this would be 1. Now I'm going to move this up to where it's right here where the top was, and so now here it is. I'm going to cut about up to here. We can always trim the excess, but you can't add more to it. So I'm going to cut around right here to where it's twice the height of my bag plus about 2 inches or so. So I'm going to cut straight up, and this is leaving about 1/2 inch on both sides of the bag. I know I need better scissors. Okay, let's see if that's enough. A good way to test if you've cut enough is to take this and just flip it up and line this up and lay your bag on it. Line up the bottom here. And if you've got about 1 inch on the top, or at least 1 inch, it can be more, then that's fine. We're going to want to fold this down here in a second. So you want to make sure you've got enough fabric that you can fold it down, okay? So line up your bag on there to where you've got the fold in the bottom. You're lining that up right at the bottom, and you've got about 1 inch or so on the top. So I'm just going to cut straight across like this. And this is going to be my lining. Perfect. And that is all the fabric we're using. Isn't that crazy? So now take your entire fat quarter that you've got left over. You'll be able to use it for another project, or another coin purse. Put that off to the side. So now, this is going to be our lining. What we're going to want to do, lay it down to where the pretty side is on the down, right? And you're looking at the wrong side. You're going to take that top, you're going to fold it back just a little bit, about 1/2 inch or so, and we are going to iron, use our clothes iron to get a nice clean pressed edge just on this top part. You can iron the whole thing, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to iron to make sure that I've got a nice clean pressed edge to crochet, or to sew into. Crochet on the brain. All right, got that. Let me go ahead and I'm going to iron the rest of it just so that I get the creases out. Totally not necessary, but I'm going to do it. So now we are going to fold this up to where the inside, the pretty side is on the top now. Fold this up, and then we've got the width determined, right? Because it's wider than our purse needs to be, or it's wider than our purse is. Now we're going to determine how tall to make it. So if we need it up here or down here, right? So I'm going to line up the top of my bag right with this ironed press that we just did. So we're going to line this up to where that is right at the top of my bag. Now I'm going to play with the fold along the bottom here, excuse me, until the fold is right at the bottom of my coin purse, like this. So this fold right here, we're using this fold instead of sewing because I've noticed that when you sew the bottom of a coin purse or any purse, when you do your stitches, it can get really crusty and really nasty in there pretty quick, and it's a lot less sewing. So we're just going to use the fold as the bottom of our bag. Okay, so you've got that fold, you've got it lined up to where the bottom of your coin purse is right at the fold here, the top of your coin purse is right at the top. So now we're going to fold back that other edge just like this. Just fold it right back like that to where, see how that's going to be our lining? Now I'm going to iron this side as well to make sure that I've got a nice clean pressed edge on this side as well. All right, and that is all we need for the iron, right? That's the only thing we need the iron for, but it is necessary to use. Someone asked if they didn't have an iron. You could probably use a hair flat iron. Just be very, very careful that you don't burn your fingers. I'm sure that would work. So what I'm going to do, now that I've folded and I've pressed my lining, I'm going to trim away this excess fabric. See how we've only got about a ½ inch over here? I'm going to trim this to where we've only got a ½ inch over here. This will help to eliminate some of the bulk in your coin purse because you don't want a ton of fabric in there, right? So let's trim this. Nice. Now, let me turn off my iron so it's not just sitting there being all hot. Now we're going to figure out where we're going to sew up these sides, because we need to sew up the sides so that they fit inside of our coin purse, right? So we're going to grab our needle and thread, and I do all of my sewing when I add linings and everything. I do it all by hand. I feel like I have more control over it and it turns out better for me. So if you want to check your size again, just lay your coin purse back on there to where your fold is right at the bottom of your coin purse, and the top of your coin purse should be right at the top of your coin purse, right? The top of the lining should be right lined up just like this, right? Now we want the fabric in the lining to be slightly smaller than our bag. If the lining is too large, then it will pucker and it just won't look as good. So you want it to be slightly smaller since it has to fit on the inside of this bag. So now we're going to take our needle. I'm using an embroidery needle because it's a little larger and I thought it would be easier to see. So we're going to take our needle. Let me grab my unthread here. All right, so I'm going to grab just some red thread here, trim that. All right, let's thread our needle. And pull it through like this all the way to the end. Here's my other end, and we're going to put these two together and we're going to tie a knot. The easiest way to do this is to kind of lick your middle finger just a little bit and then kind of smooth them and then wrap it around, do a little roly-poly, and then just pull it like this with your fingernail, and that'll get you a nice little knot at the end. You can trim the excess if you want to. You don't really have to for this project, but you can. So we've got a nice little knot at the end of our thread, and we are ready to sew up one side. Now the first side, it doesn't really matter where we sew it. As long as you're only about a ½ inch in, we will figure out how far to sew this one and then we'll trim the excess when we get there, but we're not there yet. So we're just going to start at the bottom of this one and we are going to sew straight up. All right, we have got our needle that's threaded with our red thread. We're going to come in about a ½ inch from the side here, and we're going to insert our needle right through both sides of that fabric along the fold. Right? So there's our knot. right at the bottom of the fold. Now we are going to sew as straight as we possibly can, just straight up this side. One thing that I like to do that makes it go a little bit faster is to hold it like this, and we're only going to do about 1/4 of an inch each time, but I like to put it in, stick it up just a little bit, and push it up like this. It makes it go a little bit faster when you're sewing. Don't do too many of those stitches like that in a row because it could make your stitches start to pucker a little bit, but just go up just a little bit, as straight as you can, then go up about 1/4 of an inch and stick it straight up the top like that. And we're just going to do this the whole way up the side of this lining. There we go. About 1/4 of an inch. And go up about 1/4 of an inch, come up that other side. We're just going to do this the whole way until we get to the top, and then we're going to tie a knot. So all the way. Move those out of the way. Looking good. When you get to the top here where you've got the fold, where you've got 2, or actually 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 ply, you want to just do single stitches instead of that up down business to make sure that you're getting through all of them and then it's not getting skewed at all. We're doing just about 1/4 of an inch on our stitches here. Now when we get to the top, we're going to tie a knot. You want these to line up as nicely and as evenly as possible when you get to this top one here. So that's important as you're sewing the whole way up to make sure that this is maintaining that it's staying right next to each other. Okay, now that we're all the way to the top, we've sewed, I mean, it's not perfectly straight, but it looks good to me, right? So we're going to, wherever your yarn or your thread comes out of, for me it's coming out of the back side here, I'm going to come back around to the front side and go in the top here, right? Go through both sides again, push that through. Now pull your yarn, or pull your thread, but don't pull it all the way. When you have a little loop here, go ahead and take your needle and go up through that loop again. All you're doing is creating a knot. Go up through here, now pull that really tight. Boom, you've got a nice little knot at the top. I do that twice. Pull it until it's pretty close, and then insert your needle on the bottom end, pull it through, and make that knot again. Just pull it through that loop. Now, one important thing to note when you're done, like we're done sewing this side right here, you don't want to cut your thread up here because then you'll have a thread poking out of the top of your coin purse. So what I like to do is turn so that I'm looking at the top, right? So that the top is facing me. Take my thread and just kind of insert it on the side here and just kind of feed it down to where it's down here, so that when I cut my thread, the tail end of it is going to be down at the bottom instead of poking out the top of the coin purse, right? So we are done with that side. So just cut it. Doesn't really matter. This is going to be hidden inside the coin purse, so it doesn't matter. And remember, I'm using a different colored thread so you can see it, right? I would not normally be using red. So we cut our thread. Let's go ahead and make another knot. Looks good, looks good. Now, we need to figure out how far over should we start this, right? Well, you want to remember that we need the lining to be slightly smaller than our bag, right? Because it needs to sit inside of it, right? So I like to line up my purse just like this, to where the inside right here is lined up with these stitches, and then on this side I'm going to sew right where this part is going to line up right here, okay? So one way you can check that, just lay it out right on top of it and make sure, okay, that needs to go about right here, so I'm going to do this one about right here. Can you see how this lines up nicely? So right where my pinky is right here is where I'm going to sew. What you can do, you can go ahead and insert your needle at the bottom like we did on the other side. And before you pull it through or anything, you can reposition it and make sure that that is a good width. So here we're lining up over here, and here that needle looks like it's lined up pretty much perfectly on this side. So I'm going to sew straight up on this side, just like I did on this side, and then we're going to cut away this excess fabric. So let's do our sewing straight up this side like we did the other. About 1/4 of an inch, straight up, as straight as you can go. Get any yarn or any thread barf down here, just don't pull it too tight. It's better to pull it out to the back and then kind of pull it as you go than it is to just pull, because if you just keep pulling, it's gonna make a nice little knot for you. You don't want a knot. All right, we're getting there. Make sure that the top here stays nice and even. If you wanted to, you could even put in a sewing pin right here. Let me grab my sewing pins. You could put in a pin at the top just to make sure that doesn't move, right? So let's keep going all the way to the top. Now I'm to the top now, so I'm going to start doing those individually, right? Take that pin out now since we're up here. I'm going into this very top one here. And now since I'm all the way to the top here, and I came out the one that's facing me, right, or the one closest to me, I'm going to come around from the back side again, and we're going to make those knots. And I always like to make 2 knots, so come from the same direction. Wait until you've got just a little bit of a loop there, and come in from the bottom side and snatch it. And then pull that tight to where it makes a nice little knot, just like that. Do it again, because I don't trust one knot. Till you get almost all the way there, and then stick your needle in there and pull it tight. Nice. So now we've got a knot over here, a knot over here. We've got our two sides sewn up. Now we're going to cut away this excess fabric. I'm going to do the same thing I did over here where I feed it through just a little bit because I don't want this thread end. See how we cut this, right? And it's kind of just hanging out there. It would do this up here, and we don't want that poking out of the top of our zipper. Okay, so just kind of feed it back in there. Just enough, you know, so that it doesn't want to wiggle its way back out. Make sure this is pulled nice and tightly. Alrighty. This is not going to be enough thread for me to sew the zipper, so I'm just going to take the rest of my thread and toss it. Alright, so we are going to trim away this excess fabric, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and fold this back just so that I can make sure that my coin purse fits in nicely. So I'm going to stick my fingers inside here and I'm going to insert it into my bag to make sure that I've sewn it well, that my sides are right before I go ahead and cut that fabric. So you see how we have all this excess bulk right here? We're going to get rid of that. But go ahead and put it in, stick your fingers down in there, stretch it tight, make sure that it's large enough but not too large. See how this is going to line up very nicely. There's not too much fabric. If there was too much fabric, then it would be bunching up like this and you would have a hard time making those stitches look right because, you know, there's just too much of the fabric. So I'm going to, that looks good. I'm going to take my little scissors. I'm going to cut straight up about 1/2 inch, leaving about 1/2 inch allowance. All right, now we've got a cute little lining. Isn't that great? This is what we're going to use for adding our zipper and all that good stuff. I'm gonna reset my camera and we will start doing our zipper. All right, so now that we've prepared our lining, we are going to prepare our zipper. So grab your zipper, open it up. Remember, you want a 7-inch zipper. Really, the coin purse is only 4 inches wide, so if you can find a 5-inch or anything like that, that'd be fine too. So we're going to pull this out. And do not be intimidated by the zipper. This is going to be okay. You're going to master it. You're going to be a zipper queen, king of the zippers. All right, so obviously this zipper is too long for this bag. Right? So where do we cut it? Well, let me show you. I'm going to use, I shouldn't have trimmed my thread yet. Let me go ahead and thread my needle again. I don't need much, so I'll just get a little bit of thread here. Make a knot. So what we're going to do with this zipper is we're going to make it as long as it needs to be. So it doesn't need to be 7 inches long, it only needs to be about 4 inches, right? So we only need it to be the width of our bag. I like to lay it out to where the pole of my zipper is right at the edge here, and then I find where I want this other end to be. So we lay this out, my pole is right at this side, so where on this side do we need to cut it? Right about here, right where my thumb is. That looks about perfect to me. So I'm going to go a little bit past that, and I'm going to, where this stopper is right here, I'm going to create a new one right here with my thread. Let's put that up there. So when you figure out where you want your zipper to end, right, and you'll just do that by lining it up on your bag like this, go a little bit on the long side. It's better to be a little bit on the long than on the short. You're just going to insert your needle and you're going to just sew around that part of the zipper several times. You're just creating a nice little barrier of thread to where that zipper pull can't go past it. And I probably do overkill. I don't know how many times you really need to do it, but I always do it to where I've got a decent little bulge there. And before you cut your zipper, it's a good idea to test it. So open it and make sure it stops. So now we've created a new zipper stop right there, right? Ta-da! Lovely. Now let's go ahead and tie a knot on the back of this like we did earlier. I'm just gonna go through my little stitches here, and then I'm going to make it to where it's almost all the way through, and then come back up through the bottom of that loop. Makes a nice little knot. Do that again. And come back up through the bottom of that little loop. Perfect. I'm going to trim this. Ta-da! And now we are ready to trim our zipper. So where we trimmed this, if you want to, you can set it up there. Make sure that that is looking good still. It's a little bit long, but we want it just a little bit long. Better a little bit too long than not long enough. So then we're just going to cut it about an inch past where you put it. And this we're just going to shove down in the side here. So just cut this and then throw this part away. So this is going to be our new zipper, right? So here we've got our lining ready to be inserted, our zipper ready to be inserted, and now we need our pins so that we can pin everything into place, and let's get started. I will say the pinning is probably the worst part of the entire project, so hold on to your pants. Okay, I've got my fingers inside of my little lining here that we created. I'm going to just kind of shove that down in here. I like to take my ends of my fabric where it's cut and just kind of open it up to where it's going on both directions. And then get it down in there nice and good, right? Do that to the other side as well. Ta-da, looks good. All right, make sure that your seams, see my little red dots here, make sure that those are on the ends of your coin purse. So now what we're going to do is we're literally going to take this zipper and just kind of insert it in between those two layers like this. Okay, and we're going to pin it all the way around. The easiest way to do this, I found, is to take the part that you just sewed, so that little inch of strip, and insert it, pull down your fabric a little bit, and then insert this right and down in there. Okay, just like that. Nice and down in there. When you've got this lined up really well, and of course you can see my thread, which is bothering me right now, but at least you can see it, right? We're going to line this up to where your zipper is exactly on the end, right? So here's one side, here's the other side. It's lined up perfectly. It's lined up with that fabric. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to take some of my pins. I'm going to pin right through all of this. So I'm going through the crochet, the zipper, and the lining, and I'm just going to pin this into place so that this, like now it's in there, right? It's not going anywhere. Pinning right here through all of these fabrics makes it easier to hold its shape as you're working around one way and then the other way. So go ahead and unzip your zipper. Okay, now you're going to just take this and kind of insert around the side. This takes some finagling, so I'm curious to see how long it takes me to pin this in this video, but it really does just take some finagling. So you're going to push this down on both sides, right? And you want to make it to where the zipper has about 1/4 of an inch showing between the fabric and the teeth and the crochet and the teeth. And we are going to pin this, and I promise you we're going to unpin it and repin it and unpin it and repin it. You can pin it as many times as you want until it looks good, right? And it might take a minute or 10. So this is the hardest part of the whole thing, is getting the pinning in correctly. So you want to make sure that your teeth are up just a little bit, right? Right, about 1/4 of an inch on both sides. See, that's too tall. We'll go ahead, we'll fix it, don't worry. It just takes a lot of pinning and repinning. All right, so now this end, your pull on this end of the zipper, so on this side, this little guy, should be right at the corner of this side over here. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and pin that. We can move it in a second if we need to. All right, now this one, it's always hard to get this guy in there to go in there really nicely. So this you just really have to play with. Once I get enough of these in, see this needs to go down. I'm going to repin this one. Since those are in there, I'm going to take that one out and repin this one. And just make it line up a little bit better. See, that looks better than what it was. So now I'm going to pin this one again. And now I'm going to go ahead and take this one out where I had it, since these are pinned in nicely. And I'm going to shove this end down a little bit more to where that is down in there a little bit better. There we go. See how much nicer that looks? You just got to play with it. Pin it, play, pin it, play. And just make sure that when you're pinning these that you're getting the zipper as well and not just the crochet. So here's one side that's pinned up, and it does look a little bit wonky, like it's a little bit bigger over here and then it's a little bit smaller over here. We will fix that when we go to sew, okay? So you're basically just creating the general placement, right? So now we're going to do the same thing with the other side. I like to shove this down in here on the back and then just kind of work my way around. You just gotta mess with it. Okay. That looks good for the first pin. We'll reassess here in a second. Oops. Get some more of that. There we go. Pin that bad boy. Got my thumb. Alright. Put this down in here. There we go. That first pin is always the worst, right? So we're going to put this in here. Make sure we've got a good spacing, like 1/4 of an inch or so. Put this in here. Make sure you grab the zipper and the lining as you're pinning these. Make sure, otherwise the zipper won't stay in place, right? This already looks like it's doing its job for me. So now that I've got these ones pinned into place, I'm going to do this one right here. This needs to go up, or this needs to go down a little bit. The lining needs to go down a little bit, and make sure that I've got my proportions about 1/4 of an inch on all sides. So now this end part right here, we've got a little tail sticking up, right? We don't want that. So I'm going to take this last pin out that I did on that side, and I'm going to kind of stick both of these tails down in there behind each other. Just kind of tuck them in to where they kind of overlap in the back side there. Push your lining down to where, here we go. So now we've stuck both of our zipper tails back in there. So now I'm going to go through all of it. So I've got the lining, 2 sides of zipper, and then the crochet. And I'm going to go straight down. Cool? Cool. So let's see what we've got here. Is this going to be lined up correctly? It kind of looks like my lining is a little bit off center with my zipper, so let me mess with that just a minute. Make sure that this is, it helps me to kind of pull just a little bit to kind of stretch and make sure that the lining is in there correctly and everything looks good. It almost looks like this pin is pulling my lining this way, so I'm going to take this one out also. I'm still going to hold it into place so that it doesn't completely freak out on me. So I'm holding it, holding it, holding it. Alright, let's pin this right now again. And now let's see if that lines up a little bit better. That looks much better. Okay, that looks much better. So it looks like we've got a pretty good pinning going on here. Here's a thread. Hold on, that's going to bug me. I think that's part of the zipper. Let me grab that before I sew. Right, so we're making sure that we've got about 1/4 of an inch showing on our zipper, right? About 1/4 of an inch all the way around. If it does just a little bit of wonkiness, it's where I've got a pin there and it'll kind of pull it. When we do our sewing, I'll show you how to make it to where those look a lot more uniform. So just make sure that you've got about 1/4 of an inch showing between your fabric and the zipper teeth and the yarn and your zipper teeth. The last thing you want is to go to zip this up and have it get snagged on the yarn or anything like that. So we are about ready to start sewing. All right, we are ready to start sewing. I've got my thread here. I'm going to thread my needle. You want enough thread to go around the entire purse, right? You don't need it to be a ton, but you need a good amount to make sure that you don't have to break your thread and restart. Use the amount just a little bit. Oh, wrong way. There we go. Make our knot. Make sure. So this is how much thread I've got. Not a ton, but just enough to go around the whole bag, right? Now, I like to start at one end or the other, right? Typically with this end because this is the one that we don't want to move at all. So I'm going to, we've got this knot at the end of our thread, right? We don't want this just hanging out on the outside, and we sure don't want it hanging out on the inside. So what I like to do is go in between these two pieces and insert my needle back here through the zipper part so that my knot will be on the inside of those two pieces. So I'm going to pull my needle through, just through the zipper part here, right into the back. So that that knot is in between my two fabrics, okay? So we're gonna kind of just shove that down in there. Nobody's gonna be able to see it. Now, for this first part of the purse, I'm going to show you the easier way to sew it. And then on the second side, we're gonna do more of an invisible stitch, okay? So before you get, we're gonna start here, we're gonna work our way this way, okay? Before you get to your pins, go ahead and pull that pin out and set it aside. Put my little thing back there. Okay, so the easy way to sew these zippers. You're going to insert your hook into the next, so it came out of this stitch right here. We're going to go into the next stitch. Did I say hook? I meant needle. And go through both sides of the fabric, just right at the top here, okay? You're going to want to go as close to the top as you can to where it looks nice. There you go. And just go straight in through all sides of this fabric. Looks good. Now, it's a good idea to keep pulling it tight as you go. We're going to do our next stitch. So this one's coming out of that right there. We're going to insert our needle just to the side of it here. Go through the zipper also, and then go through the yarn on the outside as well. So we're just evenly spacing, and when we insert our needle, we're making sure that we're going through the fabric, the zipper, and that yarn. I just like to pull it a little bit like that. There we go. See how that looks nice when you're looking down at it? Now we're on the outside, so we're going to take our needle and thread and go in on this side. Make sure that you've got your yarn, the zipper, and the fabric, and you're going through the top part of the fabric right here, right? Awesome. Now go just a little bit farther over, and you're going to just insert your needle again right here. Now the whole time I'm being very careful to make sure that I'm not moving my zipper up or down, because I want to maintain the same exact distance from my fabric to the top of the zipper on both sides. I want to keep that as uniform as possible. See how this is starting to go down a little bit? I'm going to hook my needle down in that yarn right there so that I'm maintaining that distance between the top of my zipper and the fabric of my coin purse. So we're just going to continue sewing inside to outside, outside to inside as we go. Making sure that this fabric isn't puckering too much or at all, ideally not at all. So insert into the next place here. Make sure that it's got a good placement on the zipper, and then make sure that you're getting just the top part of that lining, right? Going all the way through here. Notice that you can see my red stitches. If you're using a coordinating color of thread, you're not going to be able to see your stitches as well. Now you can see it on the inside, and that's why I'm saying this is the easier way that works, but you can see your stitches a little bit. So on the other half of the coin purse, we will not do it that way. Now I'm getting close enough to this pin to where I'm going to want to take that out so that I can play with the height of the zipper right here. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and like pull it a little bit to make sure that everything is still lined up really well. And now I'm going to pinch it right here to where it doesn't go anywhere. And I'm going to go about, I don't know, a quarter inch over. Make sure that the distance is good on my zipper. Make sure that the distance is good back here. This is not good, so now I'm going to pull it out just enough to where I can reposition that yarn right there. So now I'm going to go through all of this. Looks good. Pull it just a little bit again. Make sure that this is lining up well. Now we're going to insert into the next stitch here. Make sure that your zipper has a good spacing on both sides. See, this looks like it's a little bit too far apart for me between my needle coming out and this stitch, so I'm going to kind of reposition it just a little bit. Okay, let's make sure that looks good before we pull it all the way through. Looks good. Nice. All right. Look at that. So it's looking pretty good. Let's go on the next one. I'm not going to pull this one out quite yet. Close, but not yet. Okay, we're going to insert there. So we've got our fabric, we've got the zipper. Let's make sure that this is lining up nice. It's not. So we're going to, there we go. Now it looks like we're kind of getting, the zipper is kind of inching its way up. So I'm going to see if I can't pull the yarn up just a little bit. Let me go ahead and take that one out. I'll move him over here so that I have more room to wiggle this around. So I'm going to pull. Sometimes it helps if you grab the needle and you just kind of hook it and pull it up just a little bit to position it into place. There we go. Now, so we're going to go back through here and make sure that that's positioned well. That looks better to me. That looks better to me. Nice. There we go. Now we're going to go over just a little bit, go through that yarn, make sure that we've got a good placement on that zipper. Looks good. Looks good. Let's find the inside. That looks good too. Looks nice. So let's go ahead and make that stitch. We are almost done with the first half. Yay! Really the hardest part is lining it up and pinning it into place. That's the hardest part. So if you've got that down, you can get this zipper. All right, make sure we got a good placement here. Looks good, looks good. All right, move this guy since we no longer need him. Got a fuzzy. Move this up just a little bit. Looks like I need to push my lining down. See how my lining is encroaching on my zipper teeth right here? I'm going to push this lining down a little bit. to get it back in line. Show a little disciplinary action with my zipper. Ow, geez, got my got my pinky. Okay, let's see. There we go. That looks nice. That looks better, right? So there's more space there. Okay, go into the next stitch. Make sure we got good spacing here. Good spacing. Good spacing. Looks good. Let's do it. All right, now we're almost to the end here. So when we get to this end, I'm going to switch to the other way so that you cannot see this red. Okay? Make sure the zipper teeth are not too close to my fabric. Looks good on that side. Okay, we are almost done with this side. So as you can see, you can't really see my stitches on the outside. Looks like I should have pulled that one a little bit tighter. I wonder if I can fix it now. If that happens to you, I would go in on the inside and kind of pull these a little bit. See if you can't cinch that up. Looks like I got it. Looks like it was just that one side, and then pull all of them as you go. And it'll kind of cinch that up for you. See if I can, yeah, that looks better. So you can't really see the red. You can kind of see it in certain places. We've got about 1/4 of an inch showing on both sides here. The inside you can definitely see. So if you've got a different color, if you match your thread better, it will be a lot less noticeable. So when we get to the end here, we want to make sure that this tail of this fabric where we tucked it is tucked down in there pretty good. We don't want that popping up, so just hold that tight. Go through all sides of that yarn, the zipper, and the inside, and this will be our last stitch of this side. Awesome, looks nice. Now I'm going to go to the outside. Take this out. This tail looks like it's kind of peeking its way up here. So I'm going to tuck that down in there real good. There we go. Make sure it's not coming out. Now I'm going to go from the inside. We're at the inside right now. I'm going to go right in the center. Now this stitch right here is going through the fabric, both sides of that zipper on that side, and through the outside of the bag. So I'm going to anchor the end here like so. Looks nice. Looks very nice. Now I am confident that that will close correctly. Now we need to start this side of the zipper, right? So on this side we're going to do it the more invisible way. This is a little bit more difficult, but it does look really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and insert on this side. Let me do one more stitch between these 4 before we do the invisible, just to make sure that's nice and anchored. Okay, there we go. Now, the way that I like to do this so that this thread cannot be seen, I like to come through the top of this actual fold. Let's go one more stitch over so I can show you what I mean. It's easier to do the whole thing this way. So I'm going to go one over like this. Okay. So make sure this is positioned nicely. I'm going to only go through the zipper. So I'm going through the yarn and the zipper right now. I'm not going through the fabric. Okay, I'm pulling it up in between these. So here's my needle in between these two. Tuck that guy down in there. There we go. Okay, so now I've come up only through the yarn and that part of the zipper there. Now, instead of going through the fabric like this, I'm just going to insert my hook, my needle, take this one out, insert my needle into the actual fold. So where we folded our fabric and ironed it when we created our lining, I'm going to sew where my yarn or where my thread came out. I'm going to correspond that with the fold of that fabric. And I'm just going to insert my needle and go maybe 1/4 of an inch or so, like this. So I'm only catching the fold of that fabric, right? Now I'm going to go through only the zipper and the yarn again, right here, okay? And go back out. Now I'm going to go in only between the yarn and the zipper, like this. Okay? So my needle is coming out in between these two layers. Now I'm going to insert my needle into that fold again. So right where my yarn or my thread is coming out, I'm going to insert my needle right here and just go right into along that fold for about 1/4 of an inch, and that's it. Now I'm going to pull my needle boom, there we go. Now I'm going to go right where that came out of. I'm going to insert into my zipper and yarn only, like this, and finish that stitch. Cool. Now, zipper and yarn only, meaning making sure to maintain my distance, right, between my zipper teeth and my yarn. And now I'm going to go into the top of that fold right here. See how you can't even see where my stitches are, right? See how these are so obvious, and then these are just kind of like, whoa, where'd they go? I love it. So now we're going to go into the fold of that fabric. Go only about 1/4 of an inch. Pull that through. Looks good. Now, right where that is, I'm going to move this pin a little bit over. Right where that came out of on the top of that fabric, I'm going to make sure that I'm maintaining the distance between my fabric and the zipper teeth, and I'm going to insert that needle right where it came out of on that side. Make sure I grab the yarn on the other side, right, and finish that stitch. Nice. Insert into the next, make sure I'm maintaining, looks like this is going down a little bit, so I'm going to just kind of pull it up just a little bit and only go through those first 2 layers, so not through the fabric. And now I'm going to get just that fold of that fabric. About 1/4 of an inch or so. You want to pull it a little bit tighter. It'll help to cinch up those stitches. See how this is looking, right? It looks a lot better than that side, right? This side is definitely easier, and I mean, really, I don't know, once you do this a few times, you really get the hang of it. It's not a whole lot harder, but it does look a heck of a lot better. Okay, so now I've come out of my fabric, so now I'm going to go make sure that I'm maintaining a good distance between my fabric and my zipper. I'm going to insert my needle and make sure I grab that yarn also. Nice. Boom, boom. And you can imagine that if I was using a gray thread or something, you know, that matched this a little bit better, that would look even better than it already does. And I mean, this red is pretty much invisible, so I am glad that I switched to the red thread though, so that we can show you the way that this actually looks. Maintain it, my distance. I got some of my fabric there, so I'm gonna just pull my fabric back before I pull this on through. Okay, now I'm on the inside here, so now I'm going to go along the fold of this fabric right here, about 1/4 of an inch or so. Pull that. Looking good, looking good. Woo, love it. Okay, now we're on the fabric part, so now we need to go through the zipper and the yarn right where it's corresponding here. Make sure that we're maintaining our zipper distance the whole way. Looks gorgeous. Looks fantastic. Let's pull this last pin out. We are so close to being done. Yay! I love it. All right, let's stick this in right here, making sure to maintain our distance. I know I say that like every stitch, but it's important. Looks good. We're going to pull this, cinch it just a little bit so that those are no longer visible. All right, pull that just a nice little bit. Now that we're on the inside, we're going to hook some of that fabric. Kind of helps when you get down to this last bit to kind of open it, kind of skew it a little bit. So now we're here, we're going to go into that fold. There we go, cinch it up just a little bit. Now, make sure that we don't have a lot of puckering going on. It looks like my lining is just a tad bit big. That's okay, it'll be fine. Make sure we're maintaining our lining spacing. So I went through just the zipper and the yarn part this time. And pull that through. Do it again. Make sure not to get the fabric when you're doing the invisible. Now we're going to open it up a little bit and lay it flat. Really does help. Just go right into the top of the corresponding place. About 1/4 of an inch or so. Go back out. Make sure to tuck that little tail in a little bit, you know, so you can't see the where we folded our inside of our lining. There you go. Tuck that down. Let's go out. Making sure to maintain that distance. Now we're going to go out, or in, I suppose. Making sure not to get the fabric. Grab the top of that fold. Let me pull up my thread just a little bit here. Kind of cinch up these stitches. Looks good. Now we're going to go in the top of that fold. Just a ways. And come out. Now when we do these on this side here, I like to make sure that I sew down around this side really, really well. So I'm going to make this come up like this. And I just like to make sure that when I sew, no matter if I'm using this invisible side or the other side, the other way, just to make sure that I'm sewing this zipper tooth, or the back side of it, really well through the outside of the bag, because I don't want it to, this part really needs to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. You know what I mean? Put this back in here. Make your needle come up on the side, if you can get it to. Let me see. There it is. Should be right around here. There we go. And you can just go a few times to make sure that everything is tied in well. I'm going to secure this one right here with one of those regular lookum stitches, right? You could do this through the top fold too, if that's what you're doing. So, all right, we are almost done. Now we're going to do some of those knots like we did before. And you're gonna wanna do those in a place, now keep in mind I'm using red thread so it's obvious, but I'm gonna put mine like right around here somewhere. I'm gonna do just a couple. If I was using the green thread that I was originally planning on using, you would not be able to see this as much. So I'm just gonna tie some knots here. There we go. Just like we did when we were doing the lining, just a couple of them. When you get almost all the way to the end, come back through both loops and just pull that knot nice and tight. Looks nice. Looks nice. Now, same thing that we did on the other side, we're going to insert our needle and kind of feed it down through here so that you can't see it. So I'm just going to stick it through one of these places underneath a crocodile stitch. Probably be really good. So let's do that. Let's go underneath the stitch, and then we'll trim our thread down here so that it's not sticking out up here. Boom, boom, boom. Let's take a look. Let's take a look, guys. Yay! Here is our coin purse that we just finished sewing, the zipper and the liner to. Now you see the difference, right? So this is the one where I just went out, in, out, in. Here's the one where I did the invisible stitches, and it looks so nice. Let's test it. Closes perfectly. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I hope that you love this pattern. I hope that you find it helpful, and I'm really happy with the way this CAL turned out. So thank you for participating in this CAL with me, and I will see you soon.